Islanders, I'm Crit.
I'm Vi.
And I'm Donato.
And welcome to Island Fever, where grown-ass Pacifica people talk about doing grown-ass things. And today, I realized we talk about being grown-ass Pacifica people, but we haven't really talked about what that means to us, being Pacifica. So, first of all, I'm one of those people who likes to break everything down before we start using terms. Like, if we throw around terms and identify with terms, we should understand where they come from, right?
Right.
So I want to start by talking about the word Pacifica and what it means. And I was taught that, Pacifica is a transliteration of the word Pacific. And the way that we were given the name Pacific was by this white discoverer, as they like to call themselves. He traveled through, this body of ocean, and he was like, wow, it's so calm and peaceful here. Peaceful Pacific. That's where we got the name. He ended up getting shot in the heart with a poison arrow in the Philippines.
Not very peaceful.
Not at all.
So given that's how we came to having the name Pacifica, what are your feelings about that?
Yeah, for me, I embrace Pacifica as a umbrella term, right? That encompasses the three regions of the Pacific Islands, right? And so for me, that is inclusive of Polynesia, Melanesia, and Micronesia. Now, there might be some folks that feel indifferent about that term, and, to each their own. But for me, especially, as someone that holds, I guess, all of these communities close to my heart, right? It's a way for me to be inclusive of everyone while still understanding that each island nation has their own unique cultures, languages, traditions, and even their relationship to colonialism and U.S. imperialism.
For me, I think, well, one, I had to do my homework on that term very early because I would hear it and not have any understanding of where it came from. And not to mention, it is in my business name, Pacifica Rooted Therapy.
Right.
So, if you're going to talk about it, you better know about it, right?
Yeah.
So where is it rooted? Where does it come from?
Yeah.
And how do we use it? How do we reclaim it in a way that feels true and congruent to our experiences as Pacific Islanders?
Gosh, yeah, I definitely prefer using Pacifica over some other terms. People,
what?
I was just going to
Yeah.
say,
Like what?
Well, there's a couple of terms, right? I've heard some people trying to move towards peoples of the Moana people, and I'm like, Moana's that's still very Polynesian centric, right?
Yeah.
And so that's being quite exclusive of Micronesians and Melanesians, right? Even in California and the US more specifically, people throw around the term poly this, poly that, and I'm like, y'all are just completely erasing, the large Fijian community out here, the large Chamorro communities out here, and so it's I just feel Pacifica is more encompassing of that. Granted, I realize that our...
Yeah, I was just going to say, look at us.
right, but
Let's talk about it.
We're talking about, very much so, we try to be as inclusive as possible. And so you'll see that with the guests that we try to bring in. But yeah, I do want to acknowledge that, sometimes when it comes to people who are here in LA and can speak about the topics at the breadth that we're speaking about topics, it is limited to, some of our Samoan, Hawaiian, and Tongan communities. And so we're trying to change that, and we're trying to, spread the love around as much as we can. But yeah, I also don't want to dismiss that we have our, what do you call them? I don't want to say blind spots because that is considered a little ableist, but, we have our spaces that we need to, be more intentional about, and that's one of them. So
yeah, and we're not a monolith.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Until we come up with a more inclusive term that's rooted, and I don't know if we ever will, but this is what we're working with, and so I'm cool with using Pacifica for now, at least. So let's talk about our journeys as far as our identities, which is such a big one, right? Your Pacifica identity, and Donato, you are both Tongan and Samoan. I guess I really want to start with you as far as just talk a little bit about your journey.
Ooh, okay. On one day in March in 1992, I don't want to give away my birthday because y'all be trying, to do all the things, but the world stopped. in American Samoa. I am born to a Samoan dad and a Tongan mom. And even within like that identity, like deeper than that, I've lived in places like Hawaii throughout my upbringing, Seattle throughout my upbringing. My uncle dad is Filipino from Zamboanga. And so I also have a closeness to like the Filipino community and hold like all of these wonderful, beautiful like mixtures of like places, people's cultural experiences and backgrounds. But one thing that was unique about, you know, growing up between both Samoan and Tongan was I noticed early on there was kind of like this othering of like my Tongan identity, especially growing up in American Samoa. Almost to a level that like people would be like, "Oh, you're Tongan," and make me feel like that's something that I should be ashamed of.
Like
And
Samoan people asking in that way. Okay. Yeah.
And I didn't really understand it, right? It wasn't until a little bit like in my adolescence I learned a lot about like the history of like gang violence in places like here in California, like Compton specifically, and like kind of the like racial tensions between the two groups. And you know, I don't know, in some ways like I still struggle to understand it, but like I don't know, because I loved both sides, it was just hard for me to like really agree with any of that or like really understand it as a young person.
How did your mom find her way to American Samoa?
I think my mom moved to American Samoa when like I think she was like a teenager and like was starting to work to help support her family. My mom is the oldest of 4.
Yeah.
And you know, one of my mom's earlier jobs around that time was working in like retail.
Yeah.
And she thrived at it. Like my mom was the shopkeeper that like everyone trusted and knew and like could like do like math in her brain and like ring up all the things and like organize. And she was so brilliant at it. But like I also remember like part of like a story that my mom told me was that when some of my dad's sister, not a proud moment, but some of my dad's sisters, when they found out that my mom and my dad were dating, that they went to my mom's store to harass my mom.
Damn.
And so frightening, to the point, in fact, that they were like saying things along the lines of like, oya oelo konga elo, like to say, or like if right? And for those of y'all that don't understand what that means, it's basically like saying, how dare you, like as a like stinky Tongan person, like claim that you're dating my brother, like that as if that tie to my mom is something beneath them. And they went there to beat up my mom. Yeah. And my mom calls my dad, and my dad comes over and is like, wait, what the hell?
Yeah.
And some of these, like, and this I don't think happened once too. Like there were like even some of my dad's friends and like people that knew my dad like would also go to my mom's store and harass her. And my dad was like this fighter that like people in the village were just scared of. And so, like, when they knew that my dad was, like, going to come or, like, cuss them out or, like, beat them up, like, it's game over. But it was, like, something that was kind of necessary to, like, stand in solidarity with being with my mom. That then people were like, oh, okay. So now I'm forced to accept and maybe respect that. But it definitely took some work to get there.
Can I just say, I've always found Samoans to be quite arrogant in that sense, whereas in Tonga, they revere Samoans. They're so. I've just felt nothing but respect from Tongans, especially in Tonga itself. So that is, I don't know. I just think that speaks to a lot about just Samoans in general. As far as, you know, when we talk about Pacifica people, whose voices in discourse are in the forefront, right? And it's typically Samoans. You know, especially in Aotearoa. In the US, it's very Samoan-centric. And I think just speaks to the broader fact that Samoans kind of hold a lot of power in that sense.
I think that's fair. I also get curious around, like, mom received a lot of hate because she's a Tongan woman dating a Samoan man.
It's been somewhat of a beautiful experience over time to see how beloved my Tongan mom is to my Samoan side.
Yeah.
And I say that like because it's almost too as if like if you see the way that my family like have embraced my mom, it's almost as if my mom is the relative and my dad is the one that married into
funny
so family kind of you know thing. But like I've also been around certain conversations with the elders who have like even recalled that time with my mom and have like made amends for that behavior and like asked forgiveness. And you know, I know that oftentimes people may not do that in their families.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful. I'm getting emotional just thinking about it because I've had to like sit there and hold space with my mom and some of my aunts to like, you know, hear them apologize for that, and it just like warms my heart. I'm grateful that my mom, you know, gets to feel that.
Because how old would your mom have been during that time?
I think my mom had, let's see, my mom and my dad started dating when my mom was like 19.
Still kids, right? It's like, it's wild, right?
Yeah.
Shit. You need a tissue, girl?
I have a tissue. For this very reason.
Come on, vulnerability.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
I'm glad that your mom was able to find that, you know, that healing with your family, like, because they're all your family, right? And they all, you're made up of all those people, right? And so it is kind of like that whole, I don't know, one person once told me, there you got me going. Like, until you're at peace with your people, you can't be at peace with yourself, right? Yeah. Damn, Delano, what are you sitting off? Shit. Yeah. What about you, Vi? Let's talk about your journey with identity.
So my dad and my mom are both Samoan. My dad was born in Pongo Pongo. My mom was born in the States. And the mesh of the two, I think, is the closest reality to my upbringing. Having a parent from the States, having a parent from the islands, and then them coming together. So my paternal grandmother was born and raised in what was Western Samoa, and now we identify it as independent Samoa. Come on. And so through my grandpa going into the military is how they connected.
Yeah.
And fast forward after, I think, two of my aunts and my dad who were born in Samoa, my grandma decided, okay, you're going to the military. I need to take my kids and we need to do something better. Yeah. And that's how they landed in the States.
Yeah.
Which is really a big part of my adult life, learning where I come from, learning my lineage, my family, how they all got here. And my mom's story is a little, I don't want to say like standard, but she was born in the States. Both my grandparents, born and raised in American Samoa, came here for a better life and then had their kids. So having the both of those worlds merge was interesting because I feel like I had the perfect balance of culture and I don't want to say Western culture, but just American perspective. So while my dad was very traditional in like the house and upbringing, my mom had the flexibility of like, you can play sports or you're allowed to go to friends' houses, where my dad was like, absolutely the fuck not. You don't sleep at nobody's house. Your cousins can come over and you all come to the living room. That was very much so my childhood. So, and then the churches too. Church was a big part of how I learned about culture. Yeah, my mom was born and raised in the LDS church, where my dad was complete opposite, AOG.
Yeah.
And so as a kid, when my parents would go through their shit, sometimes I was Mormon. Sometimes I was going to Malachi's church in Carson. And so if you know, those two worlds are very different culturally and then also spiritually and faith-based. But at some point in my life, I think I learned to not only embrace the balance, but find true meaning. Like, what does it mean to have a parent who's more traditional? What does it mean to have a parent who's a little more flexible in these Western flex views?
Did you grow up speaking the language?
I definitely grew up hearing a lot of Samoan in my house from my dad, thankfully. My mom understands Samoan. She just very little speaking. So I don't know how much of a touch my mom had as much as my dad. But I did grow up. My dad spoke Samoan to us all the time, especially when it came to doing our feaus, things like that in the church, at my grandparents' house. Very common. So I'm grateful for that exposure because I think I got it the most out of my siblings, being the eldest of 5. Yeah.
You grew up speaking Samoan, but not necessarily Tongan, right?
Yeah, so Samoan is my first language. And when I moved to Seattle for a year after my parents divorced, I was in the first grade. By the time I went back to Samoa, it was weird. Like, I think that at that age as a kid, your brain is just so malleable, right?
Yeah.
And so I was able to pick up English really quickly and easily. But somehow, some way, when I went back to Samoa, I forgot how to speak Samoan. I had to relearn it when I was 6 years old. And there was a part of me that felt so much shame around that. Because sometimes too, I was bullied as a kid when I went back to Samoa. Well, I was bullied in America for not speaking English enough until I did. And then I go back to Samoa and I forgot how to speak Samoan and I'm being bullied and being called palangi. Which for those who don't know is a term to identify white people. And I was like, how the hell are y'all gonna call me white?
Right.
I'm dark brown. What the hell?
You know what? That is actually something I experienced a lot. Amongst other Samoan people in community. Not necessarily my family. Well, maybe sometimes on my dad's side. Because on my dad's side, a lot of his siblings married other Samoans who were very traditional.
Right.
Whereas my mom, and if you see my mom, she looks like she's mixed. So unfortunately, that's a term that I was still to this day and being called. Absolutely.
It's
the trolls on TikTok love that one.
But it's like this whole thing, right? You're either a whipalangi or you're a fob. It's one or the other, right? And there's no in between. But here on Island Fever, we operate in the gray spaces. So there's there's everything in between.
Yep.
But yeah, I get it. I mean, for me, both my parents are Samoan. Both of them were born in Samoa. And when I say Samoa, I mean independent Samoa. Both in 1951. But they came to New Zealand or Aotearoa at different times. My mom came as a baby when she was 2, so 1953. Her and my grandma and her 4 siblings. So my grandma had 5 young kids and came on a boat to Aotearoa because my grandfather had been working and saving up to bring them over. And so, they dreamt of this better life and everything, but they had a good life in Samoa, right? And so they came to Aotearoa and now they were poor. They were living in this danky ass boarding house, 1 bedroom. Immigration came over and was like, you can't have 5 kids here. If you don't find a bigger house or some of these people move out, we're going to deport you. And so the option at that point in time, the best option that my grandparents came to was to put 3 of them in orphanages. And so, 2 of my aunties and 1 of my uncles basically got, ripped away from their parents at such a young age. Wow. And so that started a whole bunch of, just trauma within the family, within the siblings who got taken away. My grandparents, of course, they kept saving up and then eventually they were able to bring them back. And then that was a whole nother traumatic, experience, going from their routine and coming back to this family they didn't really know, and so, me and my mum have conversations all the time. When we talk about this idea of a better future and opportunities, at what cost does it come, and quite often it's a loss of culture, loss of self, and that is where a lot of mental illness comes from, and a lot of the depression and the behaviors that and alcoholism and addiction and things like that. And so it's how do we come back to our whole selves? And so for me, I'm someone who's a firm believer that you don't have to know the language to be a real Samoan or anything like that. But I'm not gonna lie, you're missing something by not having that. And I tell my mom all the time, we have this conversation and we both really believe if we stayed in Samoa, we could have had the best of both worlds,
Yeah.
I mean, look at Donato. You grew up in, look how intelligent, it's you're not missing out on their education, on that, and on anything, because it's all programmed in that myth of white supremacy, right? Because they see how white people live and they're like, we want what they have, sort of thing. And what they have is a bunch of mental illness, a lot of problems,
generational trauma.
Exactly. Not to say there's no trauma, growing up in the islands or nothing. I don't want to dismiss any of those things, but I mean, there's just so many layers to it. And so for me, I grew up in Porirua, in Aotearoa. So my dad, he actually came to Aotearoa as a teenager. And so he got a scholarship. Again, educated in Samoa, very intelligent. He came over on a government scholarship, and he did his last year of high school in Aotearoa. But it was at a boarding school, all white kids. Like, I didn't have a conversation with him to really understand what he went through, but I'm sure it would have been, it would have been hard for him. And then he met my mum at Siva in Wellington.
Wow.
I know, and that's where I get my dance moves from. It's from my dad. He'd be breaking it down like Van Damme and kickboxer. And they met, and my mom's pretty candid about it. She was like, I didn't really want to marry him, but, she got pregnant, and my grandmother in particular was just like, oh, no, you're getting married. You are from this family. We don't have no bastard,
He's your husband.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you're getting married before this baby's born. So my mom got married, had my sister, Lainey, and then later my brother Mickey, and then last of all me. And so I grew up in a place called Porirua, which was predominantly Māori, actually. I grew up around a bunch of Māori kids. And so a lot of people thought I was Māori growing up.
Wow.
And so my primary school was predominantly Māori, and then I went to a predominantly Samoan high school, and it was, they all just thought I was a Māori, right? And the only reason why I was able to claim being Samoan is because of my last name, right? And they're like, oh yeah, okay, he must be Samoan somewhere. And then when I moved to Auckland to study, it was only then, when you leave your hometown and it's all islanders, and then you come into a space where it's not, and then you're like, oh shit, like, that's when you realize, oh, I'm actually I'm kind of not the majority that I thought I was, So that's actually where I started to really understand what it means to be Pacifica in a lot of ways. I mean, there was always my family, right? But we didn't really have a sense of community outside of the family. Because my mum, I don't know, she was just, I think sometimes when you come from big families, like my mum, there was 8 children, like that becomes your whole community, is your family, And when you don't have much either, like you just kind of stick together. And also we're Catholic, and so most of the families in Porirua, they were, I don't know, they kind of just stuck to their church communities, right? Whether that was e whakasa or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, our community, as far as Samoans go, was really just the family. And so when I moved to Auckland and I was a student there, and I was getting involved in a lot of student politics and organizations, and also university was the first time that I took courses specific to Pacific studies, right? And so that's when I started learning language.
Cool.
Yeah, because you don't get to learn that in high school.
You don't get to learn that shit in California. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
Right, I think they knew things.
I had out on Samoa.
Yeah.
In Samoa.
Oh, yes.
Exactly. And so it was during that time that I really started to deep dive into just different, just these deeper conversations that I've never had, because they're just not available to you growing up, So I hold a lot of compassion for people who are like, oh man, I never got to grow up with that. And it's like, yo, it wasn't until I was an adult that I was able to take these courses. But even that, there's an element of privilege, right? Because not everyone gets to go to university. Not everyone, because it's not accessible necessarily to all our families, right? So I try to have compassion there, instead of being like, oh, how the fuck don't you know this? But it's like, there's a reason why we don't know, because this information isn't readily available. I mean, now it is more so online and stuff. And that's why I like to have these conversations, so that they are more widespread, But anyway, that's kind of like my journey and where I'm at now, as far as I would love to go back to Samoa and just spend like a whole year out there, just learning the language. And just spending time like getting to know, and I think that's the only way to kind of do it, to be honest, really.
Well, one of the tools for me that really helped support relearning Samoan, especially growing up, is actually through song. I've always been that person that just loves to like be expressive and sing. So like even when I was away from home, the years that I spent living away from Samoa because of my parents' divorce, I always yearned to go back. But one of the ways that helped keep that closeness was like learning Samoan songs and singing it. And sometimes even if I didn't fully understand what it is that they were saying, it just kept that connection strong. Yeah. And then the years that I did spend back home, being bullied as a little Palangi kid when I'm not Palangi, I was not afraid to mess it up. Yeah. I would always try to express the thing. And be okay with messing it up or being made fun of. But and sometimes that's hard when you're young.
Yeah.
But one thing one moment I feel really proud of was actually when I was 12 years old. Now, I'm also the kid that I was such a nerd. And so much so, when I was at the 7th grade at Waipahu Elementary in Hawaii, it was apparent that the Pacifica kids, like, ruled the basketball court. Like it was so so cliquey. And if you're not if you don't have it in or down with the Pacifica kids, you were relegated to the bleachers. And I was just one of those kids that somehow most of like the folks that like felt safe enough to like befriend me were like the queer kids and the Filipino kids. And there was one day in my science class, and I've already clocked all the Samoans. Like, I know who you are.
Yeah.
But there was one day in my science class where the Samoan kid made a comment about my being fafafinge.
Yeah.
And he was saying it to mock me and say some shit to another Samoan kid. And I turned to him and I said, Olealo kala. And then he looked at me and goes, Oye Samoa, oye. And I'm like, oh, hell yeah, what do you think?
Right.
But here was the interesting thing that happened. My friends that found out I was someone that I've been hanging around with, like, they were so surprised that, like, at one point, I got into some beef with one of the girls, and she was like, can you not beat me up? Like, because there was this reputation that the Pacific Island, you know, kids will, you know, that were threatening. And I was like, me, I would never hurt a fly until you try it. But she thought I was going to beat her up. And I was like, I could beat you up, but I'm not.
No, but I'm saying, did they think you was Filipino? Or like, what did they?
Oh, they thought I was Filipino.
Oh, okay. Not Filipino.
Okay, Pine.
I mean, like, she is giving Filipino.
They're like, bakla. And I'm like, bakla.
Damn.
The other thing I want to say is, as I became a teenager, what was really interesting about embracing Samoan language is the way that we interact as Fa'afafine in like a coded language. And so even some of like my older like relatives would kiki in that way. Yeah. Right? Like phrases like orca sis and like things of that nature. Olo mage lale. Like it's these coded phrases that like even like, you know, we see how like even in broader like LGBTQ communities like are used and adapted, right? In Samoan, it's a play on words. It can be co-created in any space based on any reference, and you can see how that experience grows and evolves into other spaces and becomes widely adaptable. And I've also been able to recognize even like safety amongst like cis het men that are, you know, Samoan, who embrace that language and know how to speak the lingo that signals to me like, oh, you're a safe person to be around. You're a safe person to kiki with. But we're also going to talk about you because we'll be like, sis Adele.
No, for real.
Like all these coded languages, But I just wanted to name that. It was also a way for me to continue to learn and adapt and play with Samoan language to find a new love and appreciation for it.
Sure. I think growing up, I've always had connection to music. That is the one thing that was very prominent in my household as a kid. In every car we were in, it was Samoan music unless I was riding with my mom. You know, my mom had me at 18, so I think we kind of grew up together. And because of that, anytime I was with her, it felt, I don't want to say cool, but it felt like normalcy compared to what my friends would, express, or the life that they lived, who are not Samoan.
Yeah.
It's 5 stars on repeat.
Okay.
Like Besse was a
Soul.
thing. Yeah, Pacific Soul. Like that was a thing at both sets of my grandparents' house. And so I love that you mentioned song, because I think even in my work now, when I have clients who are not connected to culture, regardless if they're Samoan, Tongan, Fijian, we can always rely on music.
Yeah.
And that is a place that we navigate together. I will say, like, hey, what kind of songs remind you of your childhood, or when culture went away in your family because unfortunately the holder or the person who carried that passed away? What reminds you of them?
Yeah.
How do you tap back into that? So sometimes it's not the availability of going home, but maybe it's through music, maybe it's through practices, it's through food.
Yeah.
And I love that you also mentioned too earlier, like, some of us don't have the accessibility. So what we do have, how do we capitalize on that to touch back into where we come from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my mom was listening to Michael Jackson. That's the playlist we had in the car growing up. So
My mama was playing Akon.
And when it comes to your culture and just where you're at in your journey with your Pacifica identity, how has it both propelled you and held you back in your personal and professional lives?
That's interesting. I feel like the more and more I understand or come to understand like the history of like what our people has had to combat and navigate through, in like a political sense and a socioeconomical sense, the more and more I hold gratitude for how my community and my cultural background lifts me up.
Yeah.
Right? And so I truly believe that, now in my 33 years of age, I can't directly tie that there is something holding me back or something that is holding me down from that. I feel so elevated to a position of like immense responsibility to be on stages like this, to hold the stories that I hold, to carry the communities and the people that have come before me and are coming after me, right? And I hold so much gratitude for that. And I think I would not be in the position that I am without that understanding and without the ability to hold that grace and that gratitude.
100%.
Yeah.
I think when I think of, I guess we gotta also define like what is Samoan culture sometimes, right? Because for me, it's like there's two sides. Some people are like, oh, that's not real Samoan culture, but then it's like, what did Samoan culture look like pre-colonization, right? But then also it's like, this is where we're at, like you can't take colonization out of it, because that's what our culture has become as a result. And so it's like, how do you define what is Samoan culture and what isn't? And I'm just like, well, that's what it is right now. Yeah. And so let's talk about it. Yeah.
Not only that, I think the interpretation that each family holds to Samoan culture, like I know that there are vast differences between the way my mom's side carried culture versus the way my dad's side carried culture. Yeah. And I think they're both beautiful and have contributed to my perspective as how I carry it. But I've learned through a lot of different Pacifica clients too, like our interpretation of culture is so widespread. Obviously, there are true values and morals that I think a lot of us carry true to our hearts, but it does look different when you are mixed, when you are older generation, younger generation, when your parents were born here, not born here.
Yeah, I mean, you
I'm a product of that.
You grew up in American Samoa, I grew up in Aotearoa. Like, we all come from different parts of the diaspora, so, yeah.
Right. What I think holds just deeply rooted in my work professionally and personally is my ability to hold humility and care at the heart of everything that I do. It's really hard for me to jump into something judgmental because I always have this perspective in my mind, like, you are a person and you come from a space that I don't know about, whether it's before you, your family, your lineage. And I think that specifically comes from being Samoan. We are, or I was taught to treat every person with the same love and respect that I would, my own dad compared to the person I just met who walked through the door. There is no difference when we are offering love, respect, and care. And that is my favorite part about being Samoan, especially in my work, is because I have clients who are in therapy for the first time only because I'm Samoan.
Yeah.
They have thought about therapy most of their life. They've heard about it. They've been inspired by it, but they never thought to take that step until they found me.
Yeah.
And that's my first question. What brought you to this space?
Yeah.
Well, I seen that you're Samoan, and I've always thought about therapy, but the fact that you are a Pacific Islander, like, that's what brought me here.
Yeah.
And that kind of shit, like, it's better felt than explained.
Yeah.
Like, you just know the safety you have. And, you know, when you were sharing that quote earlier, I got chills because I think that's the power of the work that I do. People don't feel whole in their mental health journey until they know, you know. I don't need to explain because it's understood.
We have a shared baseline, and then from there we can
100%.
We can dig deep. Yeah.
And that mutual understanding of care, humility, and respect is something that I think a lot of us are just, it's not even something we're taught. It's just a lived experience as people. That's my 2 cents on how it shows up for me.
Yeah. Gosh, for me, I think, again, going back to growing up in Aotearoa, I think I really did get to take advantage of having strong Pacifica leadership there, because I found that I've been able to make huge strides in the US because a lot of that is lacking, you know, in specific areas. And that's due to just the fact that our people have been out there longer and they've had opportunities to get ahead in different ways in different sectors, right? And so having those opportunities out there, and then coming here and studying out here, and then getting to take advantage of learning from marginalized communities in the US, in particular, like the Black community. Like, honestly, coming out here and studying, doing my master's in education, that just opened up my mind in so many ways, because there's conversations that New Zealand is just like 20 years behind as far as, you know, resilience and as far as creativity and just a lot of things. So I've been able to really benefit from the Black community out here. And so being able to kind of merge those two has been able to propel me in different ways. And so, again, I think only as far as the homophobia and transphobia and the anti-Blackness that exists in Pacifica communities, that will hold us back until we're able to find ways out of it, right? And that pathway for me was definitely in the US. And that's kind of helped really just broaden my horizons. And so going back to, and I've had this conversation with Donato a lot, like my purpose, I know, is to help raise the collective consciousness of our communities, right? And whether that starts with the queer and trans communities, you know, or the wider Pacifica communities, like that's where I want to start first. And then we can open it up to the broader communities, right? And I'm always here for that too. But my specific focus is like our Pacifica communities first and foremost, But on that note, how has it shown up in your relationships and dating, things like that? Because, I mean, Vailupe, you're married to someone who's outside of the culture. Yeah, how does that go?
Yeah, so I am married to a beautiful woman who is Afro-Latina. So my wife, her dad is Mexican, her mom is Black. Our difference in culture has been the biggest focus of our relationship, whether that's in joy, in pain, in struggle, in communication, in care. It just looks so different. Like family being before myself and family becoming priority over our family, and then having to unlearn that mentality that actually my wife and I are a family first, and then my immediate family that I come from comes second. That has been one of the biggest challenges, I think, in our relationship, and being married to someone who is not Pacific Islander is like the value systems look different. It's not impossible to merge the two, you know, when we think about boundaries. And I come from a family where I was taught to kaukua, serve everyone, especially my parents. The only reason why I honestly went to college was to have a better life, to give my parents a better life, not for myself. Where my wife comes from is like, you do better for yourself to take care of you. And so when you bring those worlds together, now you're sharing a life.
That caused friction in your relationship?
Oh, friction is an understatement. Thank God for therapy. Oh my gosh. yeah, it's caused a lot of friction. And part
you
of
have to explain like, oh, I have to do
everything.
this for the love it. Right?
Yeah. And exactly that, sis. I have to do it. That was my mentality, was like, this is not up for debate.
Yeah.
This is not a question, girl. Like, I got to do it. Every time my mom and daddy call, I'm going to answer. And unfortunately, because she's seen so much of the aftermath, right? The lack of boundaries, or the troubles with myself of feeling guilty or feeling frustrated as hell at my dad because why the fuck do we have to do this when you know you can't do it? So like things like that we know are the unspoken truth of sacrifice in our family dynamics.
Yeah, but that's what I mean, right? When we go back to what culture looks like now, like, did it always exist this way? You know what I mean? Like, did it exist in a way where you're giving to the point you're depleting yourself?
Right.
I don't know if there's really what our culture started out as. And so that's why I'm always
I agree with that sentiment.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like over time, I think we've somewhat like have become competitive in our giving. Like
egotistical, right? It's like
growing up, I used to feel like love it was so like annoying and bothersome. Like I didn't fully appreciate it. As I started to get older and I got to participate in it, you know, from different angles, I have so much like deep appreciation for it. Like I hope that when anyone faces either a milestone in their life or a severe hardship, that they have community around them that shows up in the ways we do when a falave occurs. What I've seen some people, you know, do out of like the sake of people pleasing is they extend so much more than what they're able to. And that's not the way it should be. You know, I've had numerous conversations with folks in my family and close friends. It's like, what it means to give is to give from the heart, whatever that is, whether that is of your time, your energy, or your resources, right? Just showing up means the world.
There's an expectation too, right? That people place on each other, on themselves.
Or even like families. I mean, growing up, I know that a lot of the things my parents argued about was because my dad's parents in church settings, like you said, it's also about like pride and ego. And unfortunately, that's what I seen the most was like everyone wants to one up somebody, you know, just to say this family opened with this much. And so the next person tops it. Like that was my exposure to it initially as a young kid. So I despised it. I didn't see the value until now, like you're mentioning, like we can access gratitude and appreciation because we understand and we've been on the receiving end of that.
The other thing that I want to push is the notion that we can still shift culture, you know, because it existed in a different way than it does now 50 years ago. Why can't we move back to a place of, you know, you're giving from the heart and you're giving what you can rather than you're giving because you're obligated to, and these expectations are just so unrealistic, you know, regardless of what your circumstances are, you're going to give this, you know? And I think for me, it's like, again, we have the power to change culture, but it really does start with us. And so it's like, how do we do that? And it's by, again, breaking down just why these traditions exist, you know, and why they've been impacted in negative ways.
I've had tough conversations with other people in my family. Like my dad would call me and say, mind you, my dad does not work. My dad is like, oh, we had the meeting.
Those be the ones with the biggest numbers.
But they got the most
I need to put in $500 from our family. I get the call. I'm like, okay, did you agree to $500? Yeah. Do you have $500? Then why did you agree to it?
Right.
And then this is a constant cycle. It's almost like routine, like, but I feel like in some ways it just is a reason for my dad to call me now. And I'm like, okay, Dad, here's the plan. This is what I can do for you right now. And that's it. He goes, oh, but you know, I told my sister or I was like, if your sister has a problem with it, she can call me.
Right. Hello.
In fact, do you want me to call your sister? It's like, no. Okay.
Yep.
So you have that conversation with her.
That part right there. I like for in the workspace, in my therapy sessions with a lot of, I'm going to speak to my Samoan clients. Shout out to y'all. This is a constant conversation. It's like, how do we protect the pieces of culture that we love and admire that serve us and bring meaning? And then how do we release some of the pieces that, like you said, are either just adapted expectations or There are things that just don't work for us.
Yeah.
And you can do that, but unfortunately, I think to other generations, like that was not a choice they had.
Yeah.
And we now are in this space where we're navigating that, and we have the privilege and the honor to figure it out. Like, is this something that I want to keep, you know, being a part of, or is it something I want to release?
Yeah.
And that is the beautiful part of like this privilege and this journey that a lot of us are on, is like figuring out culture.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. One other thing, because we're never going to beat the Samoan-centric allegations at this point. But the other thing I was going to just bring up was also like just disagreeing with parents, right? Like, that's something that I'm like, a cultural thing that's kind of held me back in the past.
Yeah.
Is like, oh, you can't speak back to elders. And I just strongly disagree with that. You got to do it with respect. But like, and I say this to my mom, I'm like, Mom, you cannot tell me that you agreed with every single thing your parents ever told you. And I know my mom went against the grain in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's just the way we did it looks different, you know, and because I am quite mouthy. Like,
Did you say quite mouthy?
Okay. I am, apparently, allegedly, I'm quite mouthy. But you
the
know,
word on around the block is
allegedly
a little bit. But you know, I've learned how to communicate with my mom now. But we can have healthy disagreements, and I think that's something that we need to like bring into the culture. Is like, you can't just like shut down someone who's young just because they're younger than you. Like that's ignorant to me. Yeah.
And shout out to the older generations who are receptive and receiving of this change, and who hold space not to silence, but are really curious about like our perspectives and our experiences. Like, how beautiful is it that you can have that candid conversation with dad and be like, well, did you have the 500? Okay, then you did it. So here's what I got for you. Like, it is such a beautiful gift and strength that a lot of our parents are receptive and open to that. Because I know my parents didn't have that. They were suppressing that silence, and unfortunately, it led them to other spaces that were really unhealthy for their mental. So I think it's just something to celebrate, like our older generations who are really moving with time to give us agency and to hear our perspectives and our experiences is a new layer of cultural healing.
Yeah.
Like, it's collective care at the end of the day, and I'm here for it.
Okay. So just wrapping everything up, you know, we use the term Pacifica and you know, growing up in Aotearoa too, right? Like, Māori don't necessarily identify with Pacifica. People in Hawaii, you know, who are the people of the land there, they don't necessarily identify with the wider, you know, concept of being Pacifica. But we're here for y'all, regardless of whether you identify with it or not. You know, we're here for everybody. So, yeah, I just want to remind everybody that that's who we are. And even though we all Samoan, it goes outside of Samoa too. So on that note, we will see you next time. And
Wait.
Oh, go ahead. We
didn't even get to talk about my experience in relationships.
Oh, shit.
So you know what? That's a topic for another conversation. Just kidding.
All right, then. Bye, hoes.
Bye.
Thank you, bye, hoes.